From Homer's devastating reunion with his mother to the reveal of how much he sacrificed to become a dad, these are the 10 saddest episodes of The Simpsons. We're starting our list with Mother Simpson, an episode with what may well be the saddest episode in the entire show. The episode opens with Mr. Burns forcing all his workers to clean up a highway his company maintains. Of course, everyone's annoyed because it's their weekend, and Burns is just there for a quick photo op before bailing. Meanwhile, Homer is MIA. Obviously, he has no interest in working on his day off, so he's come up with a plan. Decides to fake his death by throwing a dummy off a cliff so he can skip work and hang with the fam.
He's going over the falls!
The next day, Springfield hears the news of Homer's death, and Marge starts getting a lot of condolences and celebrations. Patty and Selma bought a tombstone for him, which they've been saving since her wedding. Marge kicks them out, but when the power's cut off because Homer's dead on paper, she's had enough. She forces him to sort it out, so Homer heads to the Hall of Records to clear things up and resurrect himself. While he's there, though, he stumbles on something huge. His mom, Mona, is still alive? Well, that can't be right. He heads out to check on her supposed grave, which turns out to be Walt Whitman's. Then he finds his own grave, you know, the honeymoon gift Patty and Selma have been clinging onto, and falls into it, only for Mona to show up herself. After a bit of confusion about, you know, what the hell is going on, they have an emotional reunion after 27 years. And believe it or not the most emotional part of the episode.
Mom?
Homer?
Homer brings Mona home, and the family can't quite understand what they're hearing. Marge can't believe she has a mother-in-law. Bart only cares about overdue Christmas gifts, and Lisa bonds with Mona over their shared intellect and activism. But things get weird when Mona panics at the sight of a police car, so Lisa and Bart dig into her past and find fake IDs in her purse. With the family demanding answers, Mona has no choice but to come clean. Turns out back in the 60s, she joined a hippie group to protest a germ lab owned by Mr. Burns, which led to her going on the run. So all she has to do is avoid Burns. But before long, Burns spots her and calls the feds, sparking a chase, thanks to Chief Wiggum, who owes Mona a favor. She escapes, but now Mona has to leave Homer again. The episode ends with Homer watching her van drive off, sitting on his car under the stars, clearly missing her already. It's easily the single saddest moment in the history of the show. Homer spent his whole life without his mother, but And Maggie Makes 3 highlights the sacrifices Homer made to be there for his kids. The episode starts with Marge pushing for some good old-fashioned family time without TV. The family sits there awkwardly, but eventually they dig out the photo albums just to pass the time. Bart and Lisa, sharp as ever, notice something weird. Where are all of Maggie's baby pictures? Surely there have to be some. That's when Homer dives into story mode. At first, he spins this wild tale about fighting off terrorists at a power plant, but Marge shuts that down fast, because it never happened, obviously. She forces him to spill the real story. Turns out, back before Maggie, Homer hated his job at the power plant, more than he does now. His dream, working at a bowling alley, and he actually made it happen, just as he does with most of his dreams.
I'm gonna make it after all.
After paying off all his debts, he landed the gig at the alley. Sure, the pay was meh, but he loved it. It was low stress, fun, and just enough to keep things afloat for their family of 4. Life was perfect as long as nothing changed. One romantic night later, Homer and Marge go on a date. Krusty Burger, disco music, and a beach stroll. Then one thing leads to another, and well, Maggie's on the way. Unfortunately, Homer has no idea Marge is pregnant, despite all the obvious signs. Marge tries to keep it quiet because she knows that having another baby means he'll have to ditch his dream job. But of course, Patty and Selma sniff it out and spill the beans in the most chaotic way possible. They just really want to ruin it all. When Homer finally pieces it together, thanks to a surprise baby shower, he's crushed. Another kid means more bills. And goodbye to the bowling alley. His dream life, the one he always longed for, is being taken away from him once again. He ends up crawling back to Mr. Burns, who's all too smug about it. Burns gives Homer his job back, but rubs salt in the wound by putting up a plaque that reads, "Don't forget, you're here forever." It's such an unnecessarily cruel move.
The special demotivational plaque to break what's left of your spirit, because you see, you're here forever.
Fast forward to Maggie's birth, and everything changes. Homer's not exactly thrilled at first, but the second Maggie grabs his thumb, he's smitten with her. All of the sacrifices are suddenly worth it for this moment. Flashback over, Bart still wants to know about those missing photos, while Homer's got a sweet answer. Homer sacrifices Dream for the sake of his family, but our next episode sees Ned losing his and struggling to cope. It's alone again, Natra Diddley. The Simpsons visit a bird sanctuary only to stumble upon a brand new speedway that's opening that day. Everyone's excited, except Lisa, of course. She actually did want to go to the bird sanctuary, but the family decides to check out the racetrack, where they run into the Flanders family. Ned's there because he admires all the safety gear the drivers use, and Maude just enjoys the fresh air and people watching. Things take a turn fast though. Homer gets way too into the cheerleaders shooting free t-shirts into the crowd. Homer draws a target on his chest and finally catches the cheerleaders' attention, but right as they fire the t-shirts his way,
Ooh, a bobby pin. Oh my lord, she's dead.
she's gone and Ned is crushed. Maude's funeral is quiet but devastating. Reverend Lovejoy captures her perfectly, calling her a supporting player in everyone's lives, always there even if people didn't notice. But this whole loss hits Ned hard. Not only is he grieving, but now he's a single dad, and to make it worse, the last thing he said to Maude was,
"Can't believe my last words to Maude were no footlongs."
Feeling guilty and partially responsible, Homer tries to help by making a dating tape for Ned. Unsurprisingly, the dates Ned gets from it don't work out. Things get harder when Ned starts doubting his faith and skips church one Sunday. But of course, Ned is nothing without church. He feels so guilty that he quickly rushes there, apologizing to God along the way. He arrives just in time to catch a Christian rock band, Covenant, performing. Their lead singer, Rachel Jordan, catches Ned's eye, and the feeling is mutual. They have a sweet, hopeful moment after the service, and Rachel suggests they meet again after her tour. For the first time since Maude's death, Ned smiles, and you're left feeling like maybe, just maybe, he'll find happiness again. But also reminded that, Maude is gone. The show handled Ned's grief in a truly heartbreaking way, but the show explores a whole other kind of grief in our next episode, Lisa's Substitute. The episode starts with Lisa's teacher, Miss Hoover, thinking she has Lyme disease. She bails, and in comes the substitute, Mr. Bergstrom. He's got this quirky, inspiring vibe, and Lisa is all in.
Mr. Bergstrom is the last thing I think of, and he's my first thought when I wake up.
Meanwhile, over in Bart's world, his class is electing a president. Martin gets nominated by Mrs. Crabapple, while Sherry and Terry throw Bart's name in the ring. At home, Marge tells Homer to spend quality time with Lisa, so he reluctantly agrees to take her to the museum. At the museum, Lisa runs into Mr. Bergstrom and is mortified when Homer acts like, well, Homer. Mr. Bergstrom pulls Homer aside and basically gives him some friendly advice. Lisa vents to Marge about her disappointment, and Marge says she can invite Mr. Bergstrom to dinner to try and make amends. But by the time Lisa gets to school, Miss Hoover's back, and Mr. Bergstrom's gone. Lisa tracks him down at the train station, and in this heart-wrenching goodbye, she tells him she doesn't know what she'll do without him.
Oh, were you just gonna leave just like that?
He hands her a note that says, "You are Lisa Simpson," and then he's off. The big lesson, you don't need anyone but yourself. But our next episode, Moaning Lisa, sees her struggling with a deep-rooted depression. This episode starts with Lisa staring at herself in the bathroom mirror, looking completely defeated while Homer bangs on the door. At breakfast, it's clear something's wrong. Lisa doesn't even want a cupcake.
Just take mine. A simple cupcake will bring me no pleasure.
She's dragging through the school day too, putting zero effort into band practice, gym, and even a food fight. She just seems like she doesn't want to be at school. A very strange thing for her. Things come to a head when Principal Skinner sends a note home saying Lisa's too sad to play dodgeball. When Homer tries to figure out what's wrong, Lisa asks him if the world would even notice if she didn't exist. Marge suggests Lisa take a hot bath, but it doesn't help much. Lisa hears a saxophone outside her window. Curious, she sneaks out into the night. It's Bleeding Gums Murphy, and the two immediately bond over the blues. He tells her about his gigs at a jazz club, the Jazz Hole, and it's clear he gets her in a way no one else does. He actually respects her as a human and an artist. Meanwhile, Marge has her own struggles. She dreams of being a sad little girl and remembers her mom telling her to smile through it. That memory leads her to give Lisa the same advice. hoping it'll help. Lisa tries to smile at school, but Marge sees kids teasing her and realizes she's made a terrible mistake. She makes a dramatic U-turn, pulls Lisa out of school, and tells her,
Lisa, I apologize to you. I was wrong. I take it all back. Always be yourself. You want to be sad, honey? Be sad. We'll write it out with you.
Lisa's smile at that moment, completely real. All she needed was to be given permission to feel however she feels. This next episode, Round Springfield, takes even Bleeding Gums Murphy away from her. The episode starts off with Bart eating Krusty O's cereal for breakfast, only to bite into a jagged metal piece. Naturally, he gets a stomachache, but Marge doesn't believe him. She thinks it's just an excuse to skip his history test, which, to be fair, is plausible when it comes to Bart. Poor Bart gets no sympathy except from Lisa, so off to school he goes. He toughs out the test, but eventually collapses from the pain in the nurse's office, which is really just lunch lady Doris handing out vitamins. Finally, he's rushed to the hospital for surgery, and it turns out Bart had appendicitis caused by that metal piece in the cereal. After surgery, he's furious at Homer for not believing him, and their argument ends with Dr. Hibbert reminding Homer not to strangle a post-op patient. While Bart recovers, Lisa meets her jazz idol Bleeding Gums Murphy in the hospital.
Lisa, I sure am glad you dropped by. You're the first visitor I've had.
Bart, meanwhile, becomes a school hero for missing a week of classes. In fact, he's such a hero that Lisa's school band recital is a mess because half the kids get appendectomies just to copy him. She salvages the performance with a solo, but her triumph turns bittersweet when she returns to the hospital.
Hey, Bleeding Gums! I was great, and I owe it all to... What happened to Mr. Murphy?
I'm sorry. He passed away.
Lisa vows to honor him to make sure everybody knows his name, so she decides to get his album played on the local jazz station. Finally, the world will know Bleeding Gums Murphy. Lisa's thrilled, and as she reflects on her promise to honor Murphy, he appears as a ghost in the sky.
Oh, what the heck? Once more from the top.
Yay!
They share a final jam session to Jazzman, and Lisa knows she's made her hero proud, even if he cannot come back. Not all of the Simpsons' saddest episodes deal with death. Bart Gets an F is all about the heartbreak Bart feels when he tries and simply cannot win. This episode kicks off with Bart completely bombing a book report on Treasure Island. He hasn't read it and just riffs about the cover, which gets him busted by Mrs. Crabapple, who warns him his grades are tanking, and he's got one last shot to save himself with a Colonial America exam the next day. But Bart procrastinates all night, barely cracking open his textbook before falling asleep. He doesn't take it seriously even a little bit. By morning, he's panicking. On the bus, he asks Sherry and Terry for help, but they feed him fake answers for a laugh. Martin tips him off just in time, but Bart fakes a collapse to dodge the test altogether. At home, he wastes more time instead of studying and even tries copying Milhouse's answers, only to fail harder than Milhouse did. Mrs. Crabapple and the school counselor call Homer and Marge in for a meeting, where they drop the bomb. Bart might have to repeat 4th grade. This is devastating news for him, of course, but he stubbornly insists he can pass.
No, I mean it. You can't hold me back. I swear I'm gonna do better. Look at my eyes. See the sincerity?
It's just that nobody believes he can. Desperate, Bart recruits Martin to tutor him. In return, Bart shows Martin how to loosen up and be popular. It backfires spectacularly, as Martin ditches his nerdy habits for fun, leaving Bart to figure out the test material alone. He prays for more time, and miraculously, a snowstorm shuts down school the next day. At first, Bart rushes outside to play, but Lisa reminds him of his prayer. He has to follow through now or betray his promise to God. Feeling guilty, he resolves to study, locking himself inside while everyone else enjoys the show. Even then, his imagination keeps derailing him with bizarre daydreams. When the test day finally comes, Bart gives it his all. After finishing, he begs Mrs. Crabapple to grade it on the spot. She does, and he scores it a 59, just shy of passing.
What's the matter? Well, I would think you'd be used to failing by now.
No, you don't understand. I really tried this time. I really tried.
There.
And his devastating emotional breakdown is one of the most heartbreaking things he's ever done on the show. He just wanted to pass, and yet nothing. Mrs. Crabapple is shocked, but then he casually drops an obscure historical fact about George Washington that shows him he did learn something. She bumps his grade to a 60, a D-, and Bart is ecstatic. He kisses Mrs. Crabapple in gratitude, sprints through Springfield celebrating, and ends the day with his test proudly displayed on the fridge, knowing part of that D- belongs to God, but also
Kiss the teacher!
It's devastating to see how hard Bart tries and how he still cannot succeed, but at least he has a loving family. In Home Sweet Home Diddly Dum Doodly, even that is taken away. This episode starts with Homer surprising Marge with a trip to a relaxation center, except instead of cleaning up the house like Marge warned him to, Homer leaves the kids under Grandpa's typically useless care. From there, everything spirals fast. Bart gets lice from Milhouse's monkey and has his clothes burned by Willie, while Lisa gets her prescription shoes stolen by bullies. By the time the kids get home, wearing literal bags, the house is a disaster zone. Enter child welfare, tipped off by Skinner, and boom, the kids are taken away. Even though the mess is mostly circumstantial, the agency decides Homer and Marge are unfit parents. Bart, Lisa, and Maggie are sent next door to live with the Flanders family. Bart and Lisa are miserable, but Maggie thrives here. Ned dotes on her in a way Homer never does, and she doesn't want to miss out on that. Back at home, Marge is consumed with guilt, blaming herself for not cleaning or taking better care of Maggie. Homer, in typical fashion, alternates between blaming himself, the kids, and the situation.
3 hours and the county takes them away?
They decide to fight for their kids in court, but the judge requires them to take a parenting class to prove they're fit to be parents. Meanwhile, Ned learns the Simpsons kids haven't been baptized and plans to do it himself, sending Bart and Lisa into full-blown panic mode. They manage to sneak a message to Homer and Marge through a newspaper machine. Homer has a fleeting moment of grace before snapping back to his old self. The family reunites, but not without one final tug at your heart, and the Simpsons head home together, finally whole again. The Simpson family is the beating heart of this show, which just makes it all the more devastating when the family bond is broken, like in Marge Be Not Proud. So Bart wants the new Bone Storm video game after seeing a commercial during a Krusty Christmas special, but Homer and Marge say no. It's too violent and expensive. Bart tries everything to get his hands on the game, including playing it at Milhouse's house, but Milhouse doesn't want to share, throwing Bart under the bus to his mom. Now Bart is left without the game, forced to find a new way to get that game. After all, failure is not an option. He even considers shoplifting after seeing some bad influences in action. At the try and save, Bart can't resist the temptation and steals a copy. Of course, Bart immediately gets caught by the overly intense security guard, Detective Don Brodka. Brodka calls home, but Bart intercepts the message before his parents hear it, thinking he's in the clear. But then Marge announces they'll be taking their family Christmas photo at the try and save. Bart panics, but he can't avoid going. This simply means too much to Marge. Despite his best efforts to stay undercover, Brodka catches him again and reveals Bart's crime in front of the whole family. Marge, shocked and heartbroken, realizes Bart has been lying and shoplifting. Marge, who's always had a special bond with Bart, starts to pull away emotionally, believing that she doesn't know who Bart is anymore. She's disappointed and can't even look at him the same way. It's really devastating for everybody. Bart feels the distance immediately. She won't sing him a lullaby, and she excludes him from family activities like making snow families. Even Bart's hot chocolate is missing marshmallows, a small but crushing sign of her coldness. Bart, desperate to make things right, spirals further into isolation as Marge's hurt lingers. Eventually, Bart decides to do something meaningful to win back Marge's love. He sneaks back to the try and save, not to shoplift this time, but to buy a Christmas gift for her with his own money. When Marge catches him acting suspiciously again, she's ready to lose it, thinking he's stolen something else. But when Bart hands her the gift, a beautiful photo of himself with a receipt proving he paid for it, Marge's icy demeanor melts. Overcome with emotion, she embraces him, and their bond is restored. Everything is back to normal, but this next episode really tests that. Dog of Death threatens the unthinkable, killing Santa's little helper. The story kicks off with Springfield in full-blown lottery fever, and everyone's so obsessed with the $130 million jackpot that nobody stops to notice Santa's little helper is seriously sick.
Ooh, here comes a news report about the lottery. Hey!
Once they do eventually realize, it's a mad dash to the vet. But the news isn't great. He needs a $750 emergency operation, and of course, they haven't won the lottery yet. Homer has to break it to Bart and Lisa that they just can't afford to save Santa's little helper. But seeing how much the dog means to everyone, himself included, Homer decides they'll find a way to scrape the money together. They just have to make some serious changes. The family cuts back on everything to save up for the surgery. But things start to unravel when Marge realizes her regular lottery numbers would have won $40,000 if she'd played. Suddenly everyone's bitter about the sacrifices they've made for the dog, and they all end up wondering if Santa's little helper is really worth the trouble. Feeling unloved and blamed for all the trouble, Santa's little helper runs away. His adventure leads him straight to Mr. Burns, who takes him in, but not out of kindness. Burns trains him to be one of his terrifying attack dogs, brainwashing him with reels of betrayal stories and grueling attack drills. Meanwhile, the Simpsons are consumed with guilt and desperately want their dog back. Bart's search brings him to Burns' mansion, where he spots Santa's little helper, now part of the vicious guard dog pack. When the dog lunges at Bart, it's clear that something bad is about to happen. You just cannot crush Santa's little helper's fond memories with the Simpson family. Santa's little helper not only reunites with Bart, but protects him by scaring off the other dogs. Back home, the whole family is overjoyed to have their beloved dog back.